For me, I think it's very good decision, but it's a risk. So he might as well win it. But if he's not, there's just 6 guys that can win this contest. Legitimately, I see that, whatever start alignment, if it's just perfect, any of these 6 guys can win.
I think Ramy's fate, as always, is in his own hands. If he wants to win this show, he's got to come in at his best. If he doesn't, the only person he's got to blame is himself.
Let's take a step back and just admire what we have here, right? Because when the lineup was first announced, there was a bit of a ho-hum reaction to it. Obviously, then Arnold spices it up 300,000 that day. Nick Walker commits to the show. Then you get Big Ramy. Then you get Andrew Jack. This has all the makings of the excitement of an Olympia lineup. So I think that's something that Arnold really has to be commended for, in terms of, from himself being a bodybuilder and investing not only his passion, but his money to see this show. And by the way, yes, so it was 1994 and 1996 for Kevin Levrone. Let's reflect on something that Kevin Levrone said yesterday in his interview. We're going to release the full clip later today. But when he was asked specifically about Big Ramy, and he said he was kind of saddened to see, I guess, what Big Ramy had brought to this past Olympia. And really, to this date, really nobody truly knows what went wrong, what happened. So let's reflect first on that before we project on what we're going to see. Obviously, there is a discussion about stem cells. Mike Francois, we haven't heard from you yet on this one. From your observation on what you saw out of Big Ramy, obviously relinquishing his 2-year reign at the top, what did you see out of him at this past Olympia?
I don't pay that close of attention, but I do remember looking at him. He just seemed like, I think, like Kevin said, he just didn't want to suffer enough to, bring the diet. I'm not talking about more chemicals or anything like that. I'm just talking about go that extra mile on the diet and the cardio and whatever it would take for him to get harder. I just think that was the difference. Where Kevin comes from, where I come from, Milos, that generation, it was just about working harder and putting yourself through whatever you had to get through to get on stage in your best shape ever. So I think, we've seen that a few times out of him. And when he did hit it, it was awesome. And sometimes you don't know if your body is just not going to respond anymore. Like once did, that could happen, receptor sites, all kinds of things. So, but that's kind of what I saw.
Milos, you were there, obviously front row at the Olympia. And the big talking point from prejudging for Big Ramy was, yes, first call out, but never out of the outer fringes, never moved into the middle. And obviously it was at that point all the theories as far as whether or not that was it for Ramy or whether this was some, grand surprise by Steve Weinberger and that tomorrow night, Saturday night, we were going to have him in prime placement. Obviously that didn't happen and he dropped to 5th place. In your opinion, what went wrong for Big Ramy at this past Olympia? And is it correctable in time for the Arnold Classic?
Okay, let me just rewind a little bit upon what Mike said. Maybe Ramy didn't want to diet down, and work as hard. Let's put it this way. There are rumors and reports from Chad and Dennis that after the 2020 Olympia, which he won, Ramy didn't even go to the gym for 6 months. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
So there was like all that, oh my God. And then, okay, Kevin Levrone was known for that also, not to train. And then 12 weeks out, he started and his body just responds. Going into the 2021 Olympia, okay, we didn't know, but Ramy delivered. I think 2020, he was better version. 2021, Harry and Brandon pushed him. If he lost already there, it wouldn't be unjustifiable. So going into this show, again, reports from Dennis, this is the biggest, best, leanest, like, oh my God. So when you hear this and you kind of envision it, we were all, believing that nobody's going to touch him, right? He dominated before. Since 2013, all the way there to, I watched in 2017 being second to Phil Heath. If it's imposing. I think that even 2017, he could have taken Phil Heath. Really, when you analyze pose by pose, he was much wider. There was, some mass dominance. Especially, we're going to touch that subject, if this is open bodybuilding and size matters that much, and width. Width that Jay Cutler was saying, this is how he was beating Phil Heath, on a width. So Rami was beating everybody on his width. Crazy sweep on the thighs, but really width. At Arnold Classic that Siddiq, you mentioned, William Boyniak won, Dexter was second, 2000, and Rami was third. I do remember, like it was yesterday, I was just glancing, they were standing in the lineup, and Rami was twice as wide as Dexter.
Yeah.
He was like, whoa. And right there, I said, okay, if I'm a judge, that first impression right there, it's almost like it's not even a contest. Now, going into 2022 Olympia, again, Big Ramy was that stigma that he's going to just overpower everybody. Thank God there was my guy that was standing right next to him. So Samson, I don't know if you guys, felt that way, but Samson was for the first time holding, in a size department against somebody that was just envisioned to dominate. It's going to be like no contest, and Samson pushed him. So I don't know if already there, judges kind of saw like, oh, hold on a second, he's not as dominant. But as they move him all the way to the side right away, that was that puzzle. And I know those rumors like maybe they just put him on the side, because there was no reason to compare him.
Right.
No. You know how that goes. Steve would never do that. So that was the initiation of the downfall. We saw it. And then you can see that it was affecting Rami. He was losing it. He wasn't even fighting it. He was giving up many poses that I think he could look better, like front double biceps, front lat spread. He worked it off in a very bad way. And, so when you think about Rami going to the side, he's going to have a good side chest and side triceps. Going to the back, he's going to be exposed, right? Because of that nerve damage down in the back double biceps. And lat spread was not as dominant. I also don't know if you guys analyze that much. The way he was posing that front double bicep and back double biceps, he would make his triceps look smaller. With the crunch down, angle it, internally rotated, instead of, making a better V-taper, which with this size, that with this width, maybe would still carry him over, to compete there for maybe top 3. But I definitely didn't see him, moving, to the first position. So that's probably first time in history after Samir Bano won, and then he slipped the next year, that athlete could go from the first place to the 5th, which brings that point, Siddiq, that you were asking, is this a good decision for Rami or bad? And what if he doesn't have a redemption, but actually fall even further down? If he doesn't deliver it, I mean, it's a danger. He's going to be fighting for a top 5 here. If he does deliver it, does he has a chance of winning? Yes.
But again, look, I think we're all on the same page, only because just a few weeks ago, leading into the Olympia, again, what was the tagline? That if Rami brings it, it's game over. If Rami comes in on, no one's touching him. And obviously, yes, we are guilty of always, placing past performance. We did the same thing with Phil Heath, when he came back in 2020. But again, in this case, we saw certain flaws, certain things that just did not seem right. Obviously, last year, yes, you could have very well made the argument that Brandon Curry did edge him out in the prejudging, but he came back much better, tighter Saturday night. This year, it just didn't happen for him. And obviously, with Big Ramy, there's always going to be the dissection of what went wrong, why did it go wrong. But given where we are right now, and Mike, let me bring you into this conversation in the sense that Ramy is taking a major gamble here, right? Given that he just relinquished his 2-year crown. A few weeks later, he could have very well made the decision, you know what, look, I'm qualified for the next Olympia. Let me shut it down. Let me do whatever I need to do to get myself right, to, you know, make the necessary corrections or whatever, and come back next Olympia. Obviously, there is, you know, the discussion of him having stem cells, right? Experimental stem cells in Dubai. I believe the Dr. Khan, who's, you know, making his rounds, really, you know, developing a reputation for that.
We actually have him on the show next Tuesday. So
we do.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so we'll be able to ask him directly. So, but nonetheless, Mike, you know, we'll shelve that conversation. But from a legacy perspective, from a brand perspective, for Big Ramy, should it not happen again, and I don't mean that he doesn't win the show, if he comes in off for a second straight show in a matter of a few weeks, is this something that could signal maybe a potential decline for Big Ramy?
Yes. I mean, I think you couldn't help but think that, just because, you know, having been on the top of the world and then starting to fall, and it also depends if he has that nerve damage thing going on, and if it depends on why he didn't, you know, do better in the Olympia. If it's things that are correctable early on and he can fix that, or he could fix it, we're here now. But then I would say, I mean, either way though, he's got to do well in order to kind of reestablish his brand, so to speak, because he was the freak. I mean, he was the guy out there that it was like Dorian in those 6 weeks out pictures, that type of thing. He had that kind of impact. Ramy did every time you'd see him online or anything else. So he was there, and anything less than that, you hate to say it, but you've set the precedence for yourself. And so when you don't match that, they kind of pigeonhole you somewhere else, and eventually you're out. So I think
I'm sorry, Mike.
That's right. It's a risk coming back, but you know what? I like a fighter. I like a guy who's going to go in there and see what he can do, mix it up with him, and you know, if he's in shape, he could win it.
Well, look, knowing Big Ramy the way that we have all gotten to know him, I mean, there is no nicer person in bodybuilding, no more, you know, I guess, caring, gentle soul. So really, if there is to be a redemption story, we all love a comeback story. We all love a redemption story. You know, we love to build people up, then break them down, but then love to see them build themselves back up again. So look, if he comes in on, believe me, that entire arena at Greater Columbus Convention Center is going to be cheering his name. But Dave, let me take us into the mind of Big Ramy, right? Where, you know, initially he was not on that lineup card. Take us into his mind. In your opinion, what made him decide that he wanted to do this show instead of shutting it down and perhaps coming back better for next Olympia?
You know, I got a couple of things to say about Ramy. Number one, you know, I've been analyzing, like Milos, his physique. And you know what? He never really had good lower back development. It was better, you know, when he was in 13, but it wasn't like great ever. And it's kind of unusual that he lost, or it seems like he's missing that lower back development symmetrically. When you have an injury or something's going on, usually there's one side that's bigger than the other. Like think about Ronnie Coleman when he started getting that atrophy on one of his lats. His are symmetrical, which tells me maybe it's a training issue with him. Maybe he's just not training those lower lats well, and maybe he's just not lean enough. You know, look, I've seen people that are emaciatedly skinny who I can see lower lat striations if you get them, you know, because they're so lean. I think if Ramy was drier and leaner, I think we would see more lower back development, and we might not notice his back as deficient, you know, as we're saying it is. You know, when I looked at the pictures of him 1 week out that Dennis notoriously put online, and he looked so good in the video and the pictures. And I'm saying to myself, you know, I just have a feeling that Ramy's not getting lean enough. And because Chad right off the bat said they were playing, you know, he was going to bring him in the biggest Mr. Olympia of all time. And as soon as I heard that, and Aceto and I talked about this, we said, this is a mistake for Ramy. Ramy's got to be the best Ramy, not the biggest, you know, weight-wise. You can't try to battle and say, oh, he's bigger than Ronnie Coleman now, because Ronnie had a lot of quality muscle, you know, and his conditioning was ridiculous. I think Ramy needs to come in leaner. I don't think he needs to carb up quite as much as they're carving him up. And I think we'll see a lot more detail in his body, and I think he'll do a lot better. He's already the biggest guy. I mean, so what big deal? Levrone said it best. Levrone said all these guys need to come in about 9 pounds lighter. And if they all came in 9 pounds lighter, we would see the 90s lineups, essentially. He just doesn't think people are getting lean enough. And you know what? I tend to kind of agree with him, not with regard to everyone. There are people that are, like Nick Walker is lean enough, and I think Derek Lunsford was lean enough. But I think a lot of these guys, if they came in, harder, drier, and didn't try to carb up like with the 2,000 grams of carbs a day, I think they might actually look better. And I think that Ramy can come into this show and dominate this show if he comes in shredded to the bone. I just don't know if he's willing to go where he needs to be to get that level of leanness, or if, Chad is going to guide him in that direction, because Chad might think bigger is better. I don't know.
Milos, we'll put a bow on the Ramy topic with you because, it's funny. We always talk about Ramy and there's a question about how badly does he want it. Kevin Levrone openly questioned whether or not he's willing to be, quote, crazy enough to go into that place and go where he needs to go. But, I remember 2020, his first Olympia. You remember that was the year he was invited via special invitation, right? He didn't get a qualification. Had COVID before a show, but was granted a special invitation. And you remember a lot of the banter was whether or not he deserved a special invitation, whether he deserves to be on the Olympia stage. There was a side of Ramy, and I like to call it dark Ramy. It seemed as if he came in on an absolute mission, pissed off, right? Kind of almost out of character, the way that he was had the scowl on his face. Do you think, and obviously, look, when you talk about Ramy at this past Olympia, it seemed to be a little bit more than just potentially a conditioning issue. We're talking about potential nerve damage and obviously stem cells treatment. We'll see if that has an immediate impact. Do you think Ramy could go back into that place, become dark Ramy to the point where he can come in with that scowl and come in with that mindset again, maybe that he didn't have earlier on in his career, walking onto that stage feeling that he can dominate a lineup?
I think this is 100% the case because let's face this. When you're the biggest, widest guy, bodybuilder, right? I know, Dave, you were huge, right? So when you compete with the guys that they have a half the muscle that you have, it's kind of hard to accept. Okay, I'm going to lose to this guy. I mean, right. I'm overpowering him. So Ramy had this since 2013 at the New York Pro, and then going all the way for the Olympias. Like, how many times, how many years we expected him to do so good, and then he missed it. So finally, 2017, he was second, almost there. Then he slipped again. Like I said, he was specially invited after placing only third at 2020 Arnold Classic, so he didn't earn his qualification. They gave it to him. He came and finally delivered. Okay, he's a national hero, treasure over there in Egypt, and then
the whole Middle East.
Yeah, listen, when you live in a country with bad economy and you are not making that much money, and then all of a sudden you are set for life and you can secure a larger family and all that stuff, it has to be that comfort zone. I don't know why he didn't train for 6 months, for the love of God, after winning, right? But then he repeated. Okay, maybe he got a little bit too comfortable. Maybe he said, even not at my best, I'm still the biggest guy. I'm still the widest guy. I'm still going to beat him. Nobody touches my quad, the size and sweep, this width. Maybe he got a little bit too comfortable, and this was a rude awakening for him, right? So sometimes you would think, okay, I can slip from first to second, but he didn't expect to go down all the way to the fifth. Actually, the damage could have been even worse, as we know, if it could have been. So you're saying, is this a bad decision, a good decision to come in? I think it's a very good decision because he already slipped, and he would have too much time to think about it. And can he really bring it for the next year? Are they going to really consider him to be a top player right away? Or I was this close. Okay, my conditioning was not spot on. If my conditioning was spot on, maybe I could have won or be super competitive. So, Dave, I agree with you on many points that you made. But you see, you also said that maybe he was overcarbed. And you know how the reports from Dennis and Chad, maybe he was flat.
They always say he's flat. Yeah.
Yeah. So I also don't think that he was.
What do you think, Milos? Do you think he was flat?
No, of course. And I don't know if you remember. I think we talked about this in a couple of years ago. Yeah. I would, back in the day before he even won the 2020 Olympia, I would just deplete him into the show. I mean, when you have that much size, you can sacrifice even if you're flat. Dorian Yates did this. I know in this one, I think it was '96 German Grand Prix when he hardly beat what's his name, Kevin. That show. But so Rami, look, if he would take a whole year off, it's a question if he would even compete. You ask me. So here he still had that fire going, and reports are that he's looking better, that he's improved. Now he just needs to deliver that 2020 Olympia condition. Did he really lose that much size? I agree with you, Dave. Since 2000, I don't know which year he started losing that. And you make a good point. Is this a nerve damage? How can it be the nerve damage on both sides of low lats? You know,
symmetrical too. You know?
Yeah. So, but I don't know what it is. I'm not the expert at that. Hidetada Yamagishi, when I trained him back in the day, he had the lower lats all the way down. And then I remember by the time I came back, in 2017, and I said, what happened? He just on the both sides. And I've seen this in a few other people. Right. So let's see that. Jake Cutler was saying that maybe Rami doesn't hit that back double biceps correctly. The 2 inches. And, I would say okay, Rami, I would open up because you're not going to get detail anyway, so you might as well take as much space. You're wide and lose that pose. Okay, let's focus on other poses. His rear lat spread is quite wide. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that, I think that if he would, once he open up the elbows and spread the lats, lean back, then you can get a little bit of that lower lat thickness. That all depends. But just to conclude, for me, I think it's very good decision, but it's a risk. So he might as well win it. But if he's not, there's 6 guys that can win this contest. Legitimately, I see that, whatever start alignment, if it's just perfect, any of these 6 guys can win.
I think Ramy's fate, as always, is in his own hands. If he wants to win this show, he's got to come in at his best. If he doesn't, the only person he's got to blame is himself at this point, because he's got the tools to win. We've never seen. You think Ramy would really lose at his best? He only loses when he's off. So, I mean, he holds the key in his hand. Is he going to use the key or is he going to not use the key? That's the question.
You think he really knows? Do you think he really knows what he has to do? And whoever's helping him knows.
Mike, when you look in the mirror at yourself and you're shredded, when you're shredded, right? I mean, when you're ready to go. I mean, when you're a little off. I mean, you have to be delusional not to know if you're on or off.
I just wonder if he knows how to fix it. You know what I mean?
He's very dependent on listening to who's advising him. And and Chad doesn't live with him, so I don't know if he's listening to everything that Chad's telling him. Chad's had a pretty good track record getting other people in shape. So I can't imagine that Chad's telling him the wrong thing,
No, right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I was just wondering if he thinks, who knows?
Who knows if he's eating extra food? I don't know. He thinks he's a little flat. He eats another, a couple extra cups of rice there. You know how that goes,
Right.